Okay, so today I wanted to share with you guys 9 different rules on how to become wealthy, which I read in this book called The Rules of Wealth by Richard Templar. The book holds 107 rules which contain the personal code for prosperity, and how you can use that prosperity to live a happier, more fulfilled and more comfortable life. Now the book is separated into 4 key sections. You've got thinking wealthy, getting even wealthier, and then staying wealthy. So let's go through them one by one, and I'll share some of the key snippets and takeaways from them, starting off with thinking wealthy. Rule number 1 states that anybody can be wealthy, you just need to apply yourself. Templar starts out by saying that money doesn't discriminate and everybody has the right to make it. Or at least that's certainly true for the most part in the Western world. Money certainly isn't scarce and it's available in its abundance if you simply look around. Everybody has money to a degree, but how do you actually get more of it? Well, it starts off with rule number 2, which is deciding on your definition of wealth. Wealth, of course, means different things to different people. Wealth for one person is a roof over their head, living comfortably enough to pay their bills and their mortgage, and perhaps the odd holiday a year. But then on the other end of the spectrum, it's a $100 million super yacht in the Monaco harbour. And that's where it's certainly important to first recognise that there are multiple different players in the game. You just need to work out where you sit and what that means for you in monetary terms. So how exactly do you do that? Well, first practical tip is to actually look at and design your ideal lifestyle, and then calculate how much that lifestyle would cost to you on a monthly basis. So let's say mortgage on a house, $2,500, bills $1,000, car payment £500 a month, and then just miscellaneous expenses at £1,000 a month too. Quite quickly, I've been able to spend £5,000 a month, which is probably quite easily what the upper middle class here in the UK probably spend anyway, if not more. And whilst it's certainly not a $100 million yacht level of wealth, it's certainly a pretty decent lifestyle. But of course, in order to spend that money, first you need to earn it. So tip number 2, set an income goal that allows you to meet your desired lifestyle expenses. And be specific on this one. Don't just tell yourself you're going to be a millionaire by 40, because that's just too generic on an overused monetary value. Because you might find that once you've actually calculated your desired lifestyle expenses, that you probably wouldn't even need £1 million a year to spend anyway. As a general rule of thumb, I'd say whatever your desired lifestyle expenses are, then times it by 2.5, because that's the level of income that you should certainly strive towards. So in this example of spending $5,000 a month, you'd actually need about £12,500 in income per month in order to achieve an annual salary of about £150,000 per year pre-tax, which would put you roughly in line with the top 1% of earners here in the UK. This equation leaves you with roughly about a 55-45 split, with 55% to spend and 45% to save and invest. This should give you a pretty good benchmark to use now you're thinking wealthy, to actually move into section 2, which is getting wealthy. Rule number 20, you've got to know where you are before you start. So let's stop and take stock. Essentially, we need to calculate where we are now versus where we want to be, because the difference essentially is what you need to work towards, either as an individual or in a partnership. So tip number 3 is to create your own profit and loss and your balance sheet. Your profit and loss is your income minus your expenses, and your balance sheet is your assets minus your liabilities. So print off last month's bank statements and start to run the numbers. Pull out all your investment accounts along with all the debt that you have too, and plug that into your spreadsheet. So now you know where you are now and where you want to be, the difference being your new wealth objective. And a bit of a bonus tip here, perhaps keep it private or only share it with someone that you trust, because you don't want any negativity to derail you or distract you from going on to achieve your objective. Next up, rule 25, you need to speculate to accumulate. And I don't mean speculate in the form of blind gambling. I mean speculate on yourself. Pursue a business idea that you once had, perhaps start a side hustle, start to invest in yourself and your own education, and perhaps even start investing in assets. Albert Einstein once said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So if your life isn't working out as you'd like it to be right now, do something different in order to change your overall trajectory. Only you can take that chance on yourself to discover that new opportunity. It's certainly not going to turn up on your doorstep from your Amazon delivery driver. Which kind of links me on quite nicely to rule 43, which is cultivate a skill and it will repay you over and over. Because it's these new opportunities that will be created from you having an additional skill and knowledge set that will be able to help you close the gap of where you are now versus where you want to be in the future. It's exactly what I did with this YouTube channel. I work a 9 to 5 job and I just do this on the side. When I started out, I knew absolutely nothing about videography, editing, scripting, presenting, or anything like that. I've had a degree in business and management, and I certainly didn't go to film school. Instead, I just learnt by doing. I picked up a camera, started recording, and simply learnt over time. I've failed over and over, and it probably took me 2 years just to come out with a half decent video. And even now I'm still learning along the way to pick up new tips, because this is certainly nowhere near a finished product. But despite that, this channel still generates me the equivalent of a half decent salary every single month. It's certainly something that helps me close the gap to my own personal financial objectives, and that's not at the expense of sacrificing my 9 till 5. If anything, it's just a bit on the top that makes everything a little bit more easier. So try and find out what that extra thing could be for you. Think about perhaps something that you enjoy doing, and then think about how you can monetize it. It's what I did, and it's worked out reasonably well so far. So once you've started to build out your wealth from increasing your income, then we need to move on to section number 3, which is getting even wealthier. Rule 49, build a bit of capital, then invest it wisely. I know we've spoken quite a lot about the income side of the equation in personal finance, but equally it's just as important to actually use that newfound income to invest in assets that go up in value over time. There was a story of a US postal worker called Theodore Johnson, which I'd actually picked up from reading another book called Unshakable. And the story goes that Theodore never earned more than $14,000 per year, yet he retired with over $70 million. All he did was invest into shares within the company that he worked for, and he let that amount compound over many decades. So actually, even if you're starting out small, you can still grow a huge net worth over time, as your money grows exponentially. The point is, you want to grow your money into more money, and investing is a fantastic way to do this. But there is a caveat here, which is rule 54. Don't pick stocks yourself if you don't know what you're doing. Not all of us have the knowledge, the skill set, or the luck that Warren Buffett has. Instead, most of us are simply just better off in investing in something like a stock market index tracker in order to accumulate the average rates of return of the stock market. You can literally invest into something like a Vanguard All-World ETF, which gains you exposure to over 3,000 of the largest companies all around the world, and it's still provided investment returns of 90.02% over the past 10 years. That's close to doubling the value of your money, which is a hell of a lot more than if you would have just had that money sat in a savings account. Which is why rule 79 is so important, which is make your money work for you. Warren Buffett once said, if you don't find a way to make money whilst you sleep, you will work until you die. And investing, of course, is a great mechanism to get your money working for you. Think about it like this: when you're investing into shares in a company that's both income and profit producing, in essence what you've done is invested into a company that's got thousands of people working for it, adding value to it, in order for you to get some of the reward of that company performing well over time. Because the price of the shares will go up, and you may even get a little bit of passive income via the means of a dividend. So focus on the different ways on how you can get your money working for you without you actually having to do any of the heavy lifting. And that's certainly not restricted to company shares. Some other options include property, land, classic cars, antiques, wine, precious metals, and the list goes on. So once you've grown your income, controlled your expenses, and started to invest into assets, you should certainly be well on your way to achieving the financial goals that you have. But let's talk about section number 4, which is staying wealthy. Robert Kiyosaki once said, it's not about how much money you make, but how much money you keep. So with that in mind, rule 91 is absolutely key, which is put something aside for emergencies. According to a study by YouGov, 40% of UK households are just one paycheck away from financial difficulty. So you probably wouldn't be surprised to hear the statistic that actually over 16 million people in the UK have no savings at all. And that to me is a pretty crazy thing to think about. Now at this point you might be thinking, well, if I'm wealthy, I'll have loads of money. And whilst that's likely to be true on paper, because a lot of people that are wealthy actually have a lot of their money tied up in illiquid assets. So because of that, it's super important to still have cash buffers in place, a good old-fashioned emergency fund as it's called, at least between 6 to 12 months of your monthly outgoings held in cash just in case you need it. So of course there's a lot more to this wealth equation. I've only mentioned 8 of the 107 different rules which you can find in this book, which I'll leave a link to down in the description below in case you're interested. And with that said, guys, if you want to know what one of the best investments is for 2023, then be sure to click on this video next. And with that being said, see you over in the next one.